Okay, so I'm just going to go through the second half of this. Sorry about this, folks, or sorry about the split. Unavoidable, unfortunately. Okay, so what I want to look at is these are obviously, we were talking about these in the last session, the core root competencies and how creativity feeds into those core root competencies. And it's really, I suppose, how we look on creativity and how we sort of reimagine things and come up with new ideas. And really, within the social care professions, what we need is creative problem solvers. So that's, I suppose, what we would be encouraging, are the type of skills that we would be encouraging you to develop. It is about solving problems and working with people to support them in solving problems that they live with in a whole range of different contexts. And in order to do that, in order to do it effectively, and in order to do it in a way that works for everybody, it's important to be a creative thinker and to think outside, to think how things might be different. Think outside the context in which you're working. Think outside the particular way the problem that you're looking at has been framed in the past. Think outside your own experience. Think outside your own culture. Think outside your comfort zone, the things that you refer to, either when you're looking at how things are or how things might be. And you have to do that. This is a really interesting thing in a social care context or in an education context, is that you have to do that oftentimes in the presence and in supportive role of somebody else. So you have to sort of be thinking creatively while at the same time maintaining the relationship that you have with the person that you're working with. So for a lot of us, our creative space is solitary space. Our creative space is when we absorb ourselves in a sort of creative medium. So we're most creative when we're listening to music, or we're most creative when we're on a walk, or we're most creative when we're reading a book, or whatever it might be. But in a social care context, we're trying to encourage you, or one of the things that you will need to do is to be creative while you're caring, while you're in that space with another person. And that's fantastic. It gives a fantastic opportunity, but it's also quite challenging. Okay, so and that the gift that you can bring as a creative practitioner is you can empower service users who live oftentimes very complex lives, in very complex contexts. You can encourage them to think differently and to see their lives and to live their lives differently. And I suppose one of the sort of interesting things is that you almost need to develop that capacity to be creative intuitively, rather than going back to theories and going back to, I suppose, creative toolkits. You need to begin you begin thinking and acting creatively as a way of being, and that it's rooted in what you do. Okay, so as a sort of an experiment, I'm going to look at, and we'll do these over the course of the next few weeks. But I just want to look at some puzzles, picture puzzles. Okay, so there's 3 pictures there, and they each are graphic representations of phrases. So look at the 3 of them and see, can you think of what phrases they are looking to represent? Okay, what's the first one on the left? On the left. Bucket list. The one in the center. Or the one on the right, sorry. Tea time. And the one in the center. Life after death. Okay. Do you get how they work? Okay, so now, I suppose we've all done these over the years. Some of these will be familiar to you. Here's 6 of them. Okay, have a good think about the 6 of those and see how many of them you can figure out. I'm going to give you a minute at it. Okay, now let's see the first one. Who knows it? Shout it out. Top secret. The second one. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Look at it again. Need, indeed. And friend is in the middle. The third one is reasonably straightforward. Split personality. The next one, singing June. The joke's on you. And the last one is forgive and forget. Okay, we'll keep going. Okay, so I suppose what I want to look at as well is to give you a sense of some of the theories around creativity. And obviously Rogers is one. Carl Rogers, we've spoken as well about Maslow earlier, and Vygotsky. And these would be theories that either you have already or you will certainly in the course of your studies come across. Okay, and Carl Rogers really is psychotherapy, and it's looking at the individual psychology of the need for play and the need for engagement and the need for creativity. Maslow, then, we spoke about is self-actualization, and Vygotsky's real sort of theories were around communication and development in early childhood. Okay, so all of those are important in terms of the theories informing what we're doing, or why we're looking at creativity, and they link in with a lot of what you're doing in terms of early years development and psychology, and what you're doing in terms of different subjects. Now I'm just looking at this, and I'm after mixing the slides up a little bit, but I just flick forward here and I'll go back in a second. Okay, so if you look at creativity in terms of how you use it in a care context, people talk about there being a continuum, and the continuum starts with, I suppose, everyday creativity, and then it goes through using creativity as a way of addressing your own some of the issues that you might face in your life, and then you have, I suppose, creative therapies. So there is that continuum, and we'll look first at everyday creativity. So if we look at how you everybody, as we were saying earlier, needs to express their creativity, and people do it in a whole range of different ways. You can do it through your job, you can do it through your hobbies, you can do it through, I suppose, your recreational activities. You can do it as an element of what you do. You doodle, you draw, you dance, you sing, all of the things that you might like to do. So they're leisure pursuits, but important. Cooking, colouring books, all of that type of thing ties into that everyday need to express yourself creatively. And oftentimes they relate to things within our culture. So they can relate to cultural music, cultural dance. They can relate to religious rituals. So a lot of our religious practices allow us to express music, movement. They allow us to express an appreciation of visual art, of poetry. So, obviously there's those links in terms of how our culture operates and how our creative identities operate. And sometimes they're seamless, So for a lot of people in traditional societies, religion and religious observance provides one of the most important sources of creative stimulation, apart at all from any religious doctrine, but the spaces oftentimes where we have our religious ceremonies are inherently, I suppose, creative for a whole range of different reasons. Okay, so that at one level of your creative consciousness. Then there's, as you move more towards a therapeutic space, there's that creativity that becomes something that you use to address issues perhaps within your life. So it might be that you might, of your own volition, turn to creative pursuits to address stress levels within your life. You might turn to creative pursuits to address physical physical challenges that you might, emotional challenges that you might face. So people keep diaries oftentimes for therapeutic reasons, and they're creative processes of writing. You see a lot now of art books that are basically purely designed in order to give somebody a creative outlet and a preoccupation, and relate a lot to things like mindfulness or meditation. And, all creative media can have this purpose. So people can turn to dance to address loneliness. They might turn to music to address their sexual identity or mental health issues, or a whole range of different things that they need to express. But that's oftentimes and most likely something you pursue of your own accord. And then you move towards art as professional therapy. And again, there's a whole range of different uses of art. So it can be from occupational therapy type work with people who are physically or emotionally or mentally facing challenges. Art can be used as a way of getting people active, both mentally and physically. But it can also be used, as a way of looking at emotional therapy. So to get people to express themselves and use art as a medium by which people express feelings and address feelings. Art therapy is a well-established way of engaging people in emotional exploration and emotional healing, as are a whole range of different types of creative therapies, music therapy, dance therapy. There's a whole range of different, I suppose, ways that people, or movement more so than dance, the way that creative media might be used in a therapeutic context. Okay, but I suppose one of the things for us to be conscious of in both, I suppose, that ordinary day-to-day and therapeutic creativity, it's important that that the care practitioner uses creativity actively, whether that be just in terms of people's well-being or whether it be therapeutically. And it is obviously something that's really useful in terms of building relationships, having fun, creating hobbies, personal development, a whole range of different objectives can be fulfilled using creative methods. Okay, so that's it. That's really, I suppose, a theoretical framework for